In a traditional form of justice, we're really focused on asking who did it and how are we punishing them. Whereas in restorative justice, we're really focused first on who's been harmed and what do they need.
And when people are harmed, they have several needs. One is to get information. Why did this happen? Why did you do this to me? To really have that knowledge come to them. Also to be acknowledged, to have the opportunity to tell their story about what happened. And an opportunity for empowerment, to really be given choice about how they want to be engaged in the justice process.
Restorative justice really supports people who've been harmed by centering the process on them and really focusing on what do they need, how is this going to be made right for them, and what's the best process to engage them in a decision-making process for what that's going to look like in the future. So restorative justice is very victim-centered, and it's about making sure that their needs as well as community needs are met.
Victims need to have the ability to be heard and the platform to be heard. They need to understand why decisions are made the way they're made, and then be heard one way or the other, how they feel about that. They're not given the recognition of the harm other than by their advocate. They're not given the platform except in the few minutes they get at the resolution of the case to make a victim impact statement. And so at the end of that, Resolve is able to invite them to have more of a victim-focused role in what's happening.
We were vandalized on multiple occasions over several weeks. And in this vandalism, there was damage done to our homes. The hardest part was, how far is this going to go before it can end? And this went on for a few months. It was very stressful, very upsetting, and we didn't want to have this spread throughout the neighborhoods we build in the sense of our customers who bought our homes feeling unsafe in their homes, that they're going to be violated. The intangibles of the type of damage like this has done far outweigh the physical costs. You can't recover those.
We talk to the victim about the process, what it would look like, what to expect if they have any questions. We really do a ton of prep work and conversations to really make sure that they feel really held and supported in that environment, and to let them know that we're there as supports to help them.
I'm very glad that I attended it because I was impressed with the process, the number of people in the room, the counselors in the room, the violators in the room, their parents in the room. I liked what everybody had to say. I liked the tough questions. I liked the accountability.
I think what's really important is that they're finding a way to resolve hurt, and in this world we've got to find a way to do that, especially for our teenagers.
Kids are beginning to develop a sense of they've done something wrong, and then a sense of ownership of that thing that they've done wrong. And so I see kids really begin to have empathy, which is a real key goal for us, is to help kids grow up and see that the world is not just their little sphere, but it's bigger than that, and they have a place to fit in.
I probably would have never really seen what I did from any other perspective other than my own.
Honestly, the change for me has been like, my whole mindset has just switched, and my whole everything pretty much just switched.
So the school to prison pipeline is a term that was coined to describe a trend that we're seeing nationally, where students experience exclusionary discipline such as suspension and expulsion, and then they're at an increased risk of dropping out of high school and engaging in the criminal or juvenile justice systems.
If punishment worked, if punishment was the way to go, then I've said this before, everybody that gets out of prison would be wonderfully rehabilitated. And of course we know that they're not.
So I think punishment is geared more towards shaming and blaming and making someone feel guilty. But it doesn't restore anything. It doesn't enable the person to have an opportunity to make things right or to shift something.
I started in 1994 as a vice principal of a huge high school, and so it was really all about catching kids and punishing them. There wasn't any attempt to have any sort of restorative justice. It was get these bad kids out of our schools, suspend them, and then finally expel them. So I have really come a long way since those days when a kid was sent into my office and it was just kid after kid after kid. I would say to that kid, "You did this, didn't you?" That was my opening line with every kid. And I look back on that now. Of course, I was a younger man and I've learned a few things over the years. Now when a kid comes in, I say, "Tell me what happened."
I think if districts are really serious about having 100% of their students graduate from high school, about them being successful and getting to where they want to go, they need to seriously look at these things and examine what they're telling their students. If you're suspending students and expelling students, you're not telling them that you believe in them.
We're learning a lot right now about trauma and the impact that it has on the brain, and there's been so much research that's been coming out in neuroscience and really showing how the brain is resilient and it has the ability to rewire itself.
People who've experienced different types of trauma in their lives, especially during key developmental areas of their life for their brain, have different coping mechanisms and they react differently in situations that are stressful. But the key in all the research is that the presence of positive relationships is what helps people even rewire their brain so that they can be more resilient.
But in order to do so, we need to be in relationship, we need to be in connection, we need to be given choice, we need to be empowered, we need to be in a safe environment. And those are all qualities and characteristics that restorative justice values and offers in its application and its value system.
For me, my understanding of ACEs and toxic stress comes down to that brain development and what we know that if a student has been exposed to trauma, we know that their brain doesn't operate in the same way that, a typically developing student would. And so they don't necessarily have the tools to really understand their emotion, to understand their physical reaction when they're feeling stressed. And so for me, what I notice is that restorative justice gives us the language to talk about it.
So knowing that positive relationships is so important for overcoming trauma and the negative impacts of trauma, we understand why restorative justice is such an important practice in creating a trauma-informed community.
The connection that happens between two people and the emotions that come up and just the heart of it is so transformative and so beautiful to me that every time I feel so struck by it and so hopeful that this work, and I know that this work is so amazing in that way, that it literally just shifts perspectives and really lets us really see the humanity of each other.
I think if I can't model restorative practices with my staff, such as doing circles, having those meaningful conversations when I've been impacted, and doing it in a way that is respectful, thoughtful, kind, and doesn't feel gotcha rather than gotcha, I think we really want our staff and students to feel like even when we do something wrong, there's still support to fix it and make it right.
And the kids are happy, and we've seen a little bump in our attendance. Attendance is up. So I'd like to believe that we're creating an environment where people want to come spend their day, where employees are happy to be coming each day to do their job and to help our school be successful.
There is hope in the justice system for kids or adults alike, and as far as restorative justice goes, it is an actual concept that can work out for people to not just be in a cycle of the negative side of justice system rather than actually being personally responsible and being able to see what they've done, learn from it, and move forward in a positive way rather than feeling stuck in it.
I can't wait till restorative justice is just like a culture. Like it's just the way that people are, and we don't really have a name for it. It's just like, oh, this way of being, like this is just what you do. Like you want to make things right, and you acknowledge like the harm that's been caused, and you want to take responsibility. That to me would be a world I would definitely want to live in. I mean, I love this one too, but it would just be really awesome to see restorative justice in that way.